Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my humble home, my humble casa in Livingston, Montana. Okay, what I'm up to today is I'm going to tell you a grizzly bear story from my high school days. Now, if you're not into this kind of stuff, if you're not into good old Montana Hanyaker stories, I tell you what you want to do. Go find a movie file that's even more boring than what I'm trying to create here. That shouldn't be very hard to do on YouTube here. Come on, laugh. I'm just joking with you. Okay, I graduated from a place called Polson, Montana, Polson in 1970. If you Google northwestern Montana up there, you get a place called Flathead Lake. You'll see the Rocky Mountains up there. Polson is right at the end of Flathead Lake. Flathead Lake is one of the biggest freshwater lakes west of the Mississippi. You can't miss it. This grizzly bear story took place up in the Rocky Mountains. We used to call that part of the Rocky Mountains up there the Missions, and it happened to a friend of mine that I graduated from high school with. It didn't happen to me. Of course, once this encounter happened, my buddy, of course, got out of the mountains and told me all about it. Believe you me. Matter of fact, I made him tell me the story at least 4 or 5 times because I could hardly believe it. Anyway, this buddy of mine, his name is Greg. And I'm not saying where Greg still lives up in that neck of the woods, but I'm not giving you any more information because I do not dox people. I don't mind saying who I am and where I live, but I know a lot of people get really freaked out about that kind of stuff because of all the weirdos on the internet. But anyway, Greg and another friend of his, who I can't remember who that was, but they decide they're going to get on horseback and get some camping gear together and go up into the Mission Mountains for a few days, up there goofing around or fishing or doing whatever they were doing. I have an idea that they was probably up there partying and drinking more whiskey than they was anything. I'll get to that part here in a minute. Okay, it come time for them to come back down out of the mountains, and Greg told me they were on a set of switchbacks. Now, I don't know if you folks that aren't familiar with high alpine country mountains or whatever have you may not know what switchbacks are. The old timers used to build trails, and what they do is they build them on a switchback format like this, so that you could more easily get up to the top of a mountain than trying to go straight up. I don't know if you've ever tried to take on a peak or a high ridge and go straight up, but believe you me, a lot of these ridges around here, you'll be wanting to grab your chest before it's all over with. Okay, so switchbacks are the way that the old timers used to solve this problem of steep mountains, okay? Anyway, this buddy of mine, Greg, tells me they were coming down through a series of switchbacks, coming back out of the mountains after their camping trip is over with. Now, the part about the whiskey is this. His buddy is in the lead horse. His buddy's about 20 or 30 paces ahead of Greg, Greg's in the rear, and his buddy's sitting there drinking on some Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, whatever, getting a little swaloshy, getting a little warbly. Back in the day, that's the way us Montana cowboy wannabes, stump jumpers used to do, I never used to do it so much because I didn't like hangovers and all that stuff. Now, whether this dude was passing the bottle back and forth to my buddy Greg or not, I'm not quite sure about that. I don't know if Greg owned up to that. But anyway, here, let me get a little drink of water. Man, every time I go to, I don't know what it is. Every time I sit down and tell a story, my throat gets drier than a cactus patch. But anyway, they're plodding down the switchbacks, the trail. And my buddy Greg says he hears something in back of his horse, off to his right. He thought he heard a rock rolling off the hillside or something to that effect, because he heard a little brush snapping and a little thumping sound and whatnot have you. So he looks back there, And he says he sees this, and Greg's being real graphic and using his hands and everything, but he says he sees this little ball of fur about like this, and his horse starts getting real skittish, starts bucking around a little bit, and same with his buddy up ahead of him. Well, it didn't take Greg very long because, he's, kind of looking back there going, what the hell's this? Well, it just so happened to be a little baby cub grizzly bear. Well, Greg naturally knew that if there was a little baby cub grizzly bear there laying in the middle of the trail because it rolled off the side of the hill, through the brush and onto the trail, that mama wasn't far behind. And no sooner did he get this realization through his head and through his whiskey-soaked mind or whatever, well, here she come out of the brush, just like a freight train, snarling, growling, red eyes, and ready to tear somebody a brand new rear end. Mrs. Mama Grizzly Bear. Well, these horses, Greg told me that he didn't have to spur his horse or giddy up or none of that. Both of them horses that these guys were on, they just took off down the mountain, man, down the switchbacks, running about as fast as they could get away with it. But the horses couldn't run full bore because of the way the trail goes, the way switchbacks are built. But these horses are moving just about as fast as they can move, because Mama Grizzly Bear, she ain't giving up. She's right on Greg's rear end, because Greg was in the rear horse, remember. Well, you guys have heard this saying, stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's exactly what this buddy of mine, Greg, found himself, only I've got better wording than that. His friend that was on the lead horse up in front of Greg had a 44 Magnum, a great big old Ruger, probably a Ruger 6-cylinder, because back in them days, the automatics weren't as popular as they are now. But Greg said when he'd look up at his buddy, all he could see was his drunken buddy waving this 44 around, right in Greg's face. And Greg told me he knew doggone well that guy was in no condition to be shooting anything, because he had whiskey up in the brain cells, You following me? Well, and then so Greg turns around like this, and he's looking in back of him, and there's Mama Grizzly Bear just hauling butt for all she's worth. And she is right on the trail, right on the tail of Greg's horse. As a matter of fact, Greg said that grizzly bear got within just about 10 feet, of his horse. And so there's Greg, looking back there like that. He's got a mad Mama Grizzly Bear on his rear end, and he's looking up there at his buddy, and his buddy's like this. And Greg's got this 44 Magnum right in his face. So my buddy was technically stuck between, instead of being stuck between a rock and a hard place, he was stuck between a 44 Magnum barrel and a mad grizzly bear. Now that's really kind of a screwed up position to be in, would you not agree? I thought that part was just hilarious. And the only thing that's, okay, I'm not a sadist or anything like that, because nothing happened. Nobody got hurt. Thank God the guy up there with the 44 that was all drunk with the whiskey didn't fire around. Greg had a 357 Magnum, and Greg told me he come just seconds away from firing at that grizzly bear, but he didn't want to wound the grizzly bear because the horse was, they're going down these switchbacks, and he's trying to rein the horse, and stay in the saddle, and he didn't want to take the chance of wounding the grizzly bear or missing or making it madder than it was or whatever have you. But Greg told me if that bear would have got any closer, he would have had to have shot it or shot at it or something, because he knew that grizzly bear was going to take it, try to knock that horse down, because they could easily knock the legs out of a grown horse and knock a horse down. They are strong. They are very strong. But what ended up happening after about a half a mile chase or so, finally the mother figured that she'd ran off the intruders that was bothering her little cubs or cub or however many cubs she had. Greg said he only seen one, but he was pretty sure there was a couple of them around. So she give up the chase. So no foul, nobody got hurt, nobody died that day or anything like that. But I laughed and laughed and laughed, because just think about it, ladies and gentlemen. A guy up ahead of you with a drunken 44 Magnum barrel right in your face and a grizzly bear right on your rear end. It doesn't get any more exciting, with the lack of better wording than that. Okay, anyway, that's all. They got out of the mountain safe and all that. So that's the end of my story. Ladies and gentlemen, like I'm famous or infamous for saying, thank you very much for visiting me here in my home in Livingston, Montana. Take care of yourselves, and we shall see you on down the trail. Adios, my friends.